Alright, we need to talk about PlayStation and their treatment of indie developers. There's no denying that indies are a very important part of this industry, and the more we can encourage them and fuel them, and the more we can help them, the better. You know, they just add an extra layer to a library of games, and indie straight up make some of the most compelling games in the world because they think outside the box. They often don't tend to be bound by, corporate interests, and so they just have the creative freedom to try crazy stuff, which paves the road for just some of the coolest experiences out there. But as far as PlayStation is concerned, we're starting to get word that the way Sony and PlayStation just communicate with developers, the way they charge developers for certain promotions and other facets, it's all very screwed up based on tweets by a number of indie developers who have been corroborating each other, who've had the same experience. So I'd like to begin with the Twitter user and the indie developer that started it all, Ian Garner. And I'm going to read a lot of this stuff word for word because I don't want to dilute this information. So let's begin. Okay, I'm mad enough to burn some bridges because honestly, what's the point of a bridge that I'm not allowed to cross? So here's a thread about Platform X. Now, this guy intentionally is being vague about exactly which platform it is, but it's fairly obvious it's PlayStation. I will not be defining Platform X, but it's the operator of a very successful console and does not have Game Pass. You'll see later on in other tweets and other developers' expression of frustration that this is very clearly PlayStation they're referring to. Scrolling down, Platform X gives developers no ability to manage their games. In order to get promotion, you must jump through hoops, beg, and plead for any level of promotion. And a blog is not as good as they think it is, likely referring to PlayStation Blog, which is, this blog where PlayStation occasionally features individual games or groups of games. For example, here's one right here. Indies take the spotlight with a day of new reveals and updates, and this is a PlayStation Indies video that highlights some of the more prominent indies. Also, oftentimes you might see a few blogs where, for example, if I click on PlayStation Blog right now, you'll see that, some of the latest posts are of games that are coming out, be it indies or AAAs, and occasionally you'll see indies featured as well. But for that privilege, you do have to essentially pay Sony to have them promote indies for them. And so he's saying those blogs are not as useful as they think it is. And it's very true. I seldom check PlayStation blogs. I only check the blog if it's for something really high profile, something like, like when PlayStation 5's hardware got announced, or when PSVR 2 was kind of detailed briefly, or certain AAA games. That's when maybe some people check those blogs for more information, but more often than not, for games that you're not looking for, you're really not going to check, or most people are not going to check those blogs. If it's some unknown indie title, the blogs are really not going to help. So this developer continued. If Platform X doesn't like your game, no fanfare, no feature, no love. Apparently PlayStation is very selective about which indies they support. There are ones that are just more high profile and gain more traction, and those are going to lean heavily towards, but there are plenty of indie devs out there who are also trying to make a name for themselves and who might have something really interesting to share with the world, and they're just not given that opportunity because of the way they're treated and the way Sony just kind of neglects them. There is nothing you can do to fix this. Wishlists have no effect, so all your personal marketing means nothing to Platform X. All that matters is their evaluation. How is this evaluation done? Don't know. They don't share that, nor will they share the value they ascribe to my game. So indie devs don't have a criteria for what needs to happen for Sony to put some attention on that game, to catch PlayStation's attention. It just kind of happens willy-nilly, and it just kind of happens to PlayStation and Sony's whim. Just whatever games they feel like supporting, they'll support. And, that is a list that's probably not an extensive one. Ian then details the process of releasing an indie game on PlayStation. So before you launch, you need to 1. Develop the game for Platform X. 2. Get through their incredibly difficult lot check spread over 3 generations of back-end software. 3. Submit a Platform X specific trailer. 4. Write a Platform X blog wish. 5. Submit multiple forms for social media. 3 and 4, referring to submitting a Platform X specific trailer and writing a blog. need to go through an account manager. When asked how to get an account manager, we were told, "I'm not sure. They're assigned by resource." So basically, indie devs face the equivalent of really crappy customer service when they try to go through this step-by-step process of trying to launch the game on PlayStation 5 and trying to meet their specifications. And as we know, there's no way to know what resource level you have been assigned. By the way, you cannot even do a launch discount without their approval, and it is very limited. That's right, you can't do the thing that every other platform does, meaning that Platform X owners will always get the worst deal. It should be up to the developers to decide when they want to host a discount. They shouldn't have to jump through hoops to do something as simple as reducing the price for their games when they feel it is warranted. PlayStation shouldn't have to complicate this process to this degree. And this doesn't just affect developers' ability to drive sales, it affects us as customers and our ability to potentially purchase games at cheaper prices on the PlayStation platform, specifically where indies are concerned. Ian then continues, and this is really egregious, "Oh, but don't worry, there's a way to guarantee you get featured. All you need to do is spend a very reasonable minimum of $25,000 to get featuring, and then 30% of your subsequent earnings. Bargain." Now, $25,000 may not sound like much if you're a AAA developer, if you're a AAA company, but for an indie developer, $25,000 is a lot of money that could go into actually developing the game and paying staff. And 30% being taken on top of that? Doesn't the platform already take 30% when you're selling on PlayStation Store? Same with Xbox and Nintendo. So I'm wondering, is this like an additional 30%? Just 30% of the sales generated by the promotion here when you pay $25,000? I'm not exactly sure, but basically the fees that are allotted to indie developers are utterly ridiculous. They're the ones who can afford these kinds of fees least, and yet they're being charged to this degree. Ian then expresses further frustrations about how PlayStation handles discounts. Now, when your game is on the platform, likely without any support from Platform X, you may think, no problem, I can sync up discounts on Platform X with Steam and others. Wrong. Discounts are invite only, and invites are also very limited. How can you limit discounts for indie devs to this degree, when indie devs in particular especially depend on discounts and promoting those discounts to drive further sales, to try to spread word about their game, and to encourage people to engage with their titles? This is, asinine. This is so bad that according to Ian, it's been literally years since we could put a title of ours in discount. And I spoke to some other very popular developers today, and they had the same experience. So even if your game does well at launch and thrives on other platforms, you may still never be invited. Why? Who knows? So there's just this level of inconsistency. Even if your game does well, it could potentially not be eligible for a discount, or for the developer to be able to decide to discount their own game because of reasons. This is about as consistent as how Twitter verifies certain Twitter users and don't verify other Twitter users, regardless of how much proof you provide. Developers are severely limited in how they manage their games, whether they can discount their games or not. They're not given promotion unless you pay an exorbitant fee. The back-end developer support is like really awful customer support that makes the process of launching their games on PlayStation just that much more of a pain in the ass. There's just a slew of issues that is crippling the sales of many indie developers' titles and projects on the platform. Ian concludes with, so for any gamers who have wandered in here, next time you're unhappy about your game never being discounted on Platform X, aka PlayStation, or a game you want not launching on Platform X, aka PlayStation, please go and complain to PlayStation. Now, it wasn't long after that another indie developer retweeted this and shared their own experiences. This is Matthew White, CEO of Whitethorne Games, and he tweeted this. All right, I'm gonna unfortunately throw my hat in here as well. We love our Platform X friends, and I'm former Platform X employee myself. This is a former PlayStation employee who's calling them out, but we cannot move the needle on the platform. Less than 3% of sales as a company are on Platform X, are on PlayStation. You can see right here a chart that, trying to keep it vague, reads totally hypothetical, definitely not real revenue breakdown. And so we have basically the three platforms. Proficient Sergeant, is basically Xbox Proficient Sergeant, likely referring to Halo Master Chief. Plumber Without a Wrench, Mario. This is Nintendo. So yeah, the Nintendo Switch has been really good for indie developers. I think a lot of customers like the idea of taking their indie games on the go. So indie games that are released on Switch tend to do fairly well if properly marketed and if the quality is good enough. But as far as PlayStation goes, it's literally the smallest sliver of the bunch. Gabe Newell PC. Even that sliver's a little bigger than PlayStation. And it has to do with a lot of those back-end issues detailed by Ian. And Matthew adds additional context. PlayStation is our worst performing platform, worse than other well-known plumber or super soldier related video game systems, Nintendo and Xbox, and also worse than DRM-free sales platforms like itch.io, etc. PlayStation is one of the biggest, it is the biggest platform in the world right now. 100 million plus PlayStation 4 players. PS5, it's just in such high demand that supply can't keep up. And yet, indie games on this platform, according to some of these folks, are the worst selling on that platform. Itch.io somehow manages to generate more sales for these indie devs than frickin' PlayStation. Last month, we made more on Google AdMob. Marketing, analytics, CPM, etc. tools are non-existent for PlayStation. Average email responses are in months, not days or weeks. Again, much like crappy customer service, but crappy developer service. We have no visibility or communication with what is happening at PlayStation. It took us more than 8 months to get kits for PlayStation hardware, despite having numerous confirmed IPs on the title. So even if you're a prominent indie developer, you might still experience all of these problems and all of these back-end obstacles. We have a full-time employee who spends more than half of his time digging through sales reports for PlayStation as they're sent in Excel-driven invoices that require manual invoicing like it's 1928. Even the invoicing system is outdated. There is internal chaos with messages coming from random teams at random times, a lack of coordination on the back end as far as PlayStation goes. We're a company with about 19 full-time, 10 part-time employees, and I'm honestly not sure life to date we have made more on this platform than they're asking us to pay out of pocket for featuring. They've made less money on PlayStation than they're being asked to pay for any kind of promotion. We regularly have to go over our AM directly to corporate to get anything done. It is impossible to plan launch support. Vouchers for Kickstarter backers take months to generate. Nobody will answer support emails. We get no store ops opportunities. PS5 featuring and placement is a giant mystery. Our AM regularly says he'll address them and just doesn't. I know it seems like I'm jumping on a dog pile, but it's been really difficult to work with our developers, telling them straight up not to expect sales on PlayStation. I'd love to see that change. So would I, because I am a PlayStation player. I love the platform, and I would love to play indie games on that platform, and I'd love to see developers succeed and be happy to release their games on this platform that I enjoy, but PlayStation is making that increasingly difficult because of outdated systems, because developer support just is unresponsive. The communication is just so lackluster, and just the way they treat indie devs and just the inconsistency of it all and the fees that they charge, just all of it combined creates a pipeline that just constantly gets clogged for developers, and they have to work harder than they should. Here we have another indie developer, Ragnar Tornkist, who retweeted Ian and expressed that this thread mirrors our experiences exactly. Dragon has been out for over a year on consoles. When was the last time it was discounted or featured in a sale? And it's definitely not for a lack of trying. It's disheartening. So these developers are trying very hard to actually give us these games for cheaper, but it is PlayStation and Sony who is getting in the way because of behind-the-scenes pipeline clogging and because of just the limitations surrounding developers' autonomy to discount their games with ease. And Ragnar says that we're a pretty established developer with a proven track record, but I honestly have no idea who to even contact to make console sales happen. It's like trying to be heard in the vacuum of space. I don't know if it's just that the infrastructure of developer support is just utter chaos behind the scenes and is completely disorganized, or if they're just straight up ignoring these developers because they're not as important, but whatever the case, This is unacceptable. Here we have another indie dev, Jay Tholen, who retweeted Ian and said, yeah, PlayStation sucks for indie devs. We have sold like trash on there compared to the other big consoles. Also, we make more sales on itch alone than we do on PlayStation, I'm pretty sure. Games selling worse on PlayStation than on itch is exactly what Matthew said here. And the titles released on itch, they're DRM free, meaning that you could potentially just like spread them around and very easily pirate them and very easily distribute copies, and yet games sell better on the DRM free platform than it does on the platform with DRM protection that makes it a lot harder to pirate and distribute free copies. And PlayStation is a far more well-known platform than itch. I'd like to share one more tweet by indie developer Mike Rose, who's been seeing all of this happen and said, there's a thread going around today that lots of people are sharing. The reason you don't see more threads like it is because devs are too worried to say it publicly. Yeah, I mean, indie devs may very well burn bridges with PlayStation and tarnish that relationship by speaking out like this, but at this point, what difference does it make? Their game's already selling like crap. The support for their game is already crap. It's not like this bridge is going to do them any favors, so might as well risk burning it if it ultimately means that we could potentially see positive change by calling this stuff out and seeing this stuff reported, which I hope I can contribute to, because this kind of treatment against indie devs is just simply unacceptable to me, and it tarnishes what is one of the most valuable aspects of the games industry right now in a landscape where so many AAA publishers release games egregiously or just don't think outside the box and just kind of go for generic releases, when indie devs are the ones who are really pushing the boundaries on what can be achieved with this interactive medium. Mike concludes by stating that despite devs not often speaking out about this because they're worried to say this publicly and potentially burn bridges, trust me when I say that the vast majority of developers are reading that thread and nodding their heads violently. I mean, this certainly seems to be the case, and I wouldn't be surprised if over the next few hours and days even, we're gonna see even more indie devs speak out and share similar experiences. And this is a very good thing, because the more word spreads, the more pressure Sony and PlayStation will feel to enact positive changes if they don't want to face PR backlash. So I really hope that people really speak out about this, and I really hope Sony does the right thing here and starts to implement some changes that will make their platform more indie friendly, like how Nintendo and Xbox are, which apparently seem to be satisfactory enough that indie devs aren't speaking out against those companies. And fortunately, major prominent news outlets are speaking out about this. Typing in PlayStation Indie and going to the news page on Google, you'll find many headlines that detail what's going on behind the scenes, and hopefully all of this will pressure Sony into enacting some positive changes. We'll see what happens, and I'll keep you guys updated as all of this develops. We'll see if Sony releases a statement and, admits their faults and actually relays that they do plan to make some positive changes, or if indie devs eventually down the line do speak out, and hopefully when they do, we'll hear positive news that Sony is actually looking at this feedback and changing and enhancing what they need to. But until then, let me know in the comments below what your take is on everything expressed here by all of these indie developers and what their experience has been like working with PlayStation. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.